I've been teaching special education SDC class for 15 years, and that's kind of like dog years. It's like 1 year is really 7. So a couple of your questions have to do with the beginning of my teaching, and I'll try to remember back then, but it's been a long time. I'm assuming we have some counselors or school psychologists. What do we got in here? What do you got?
If you're a credential student, raise your hand.
All right. Oh, that's everybody. We got teachers in here.
All right. Master's candidates, anyone?
Masters. Okay. So it's mostly teachers. You guys know.
And then school psychology students. You can raise your hand.
Okay. All right. So working teachers, we're all trying to hang in there. Hang in there. I'm hanging on. It's like my 3rd week of school right now. So, how I chose this career. That question's a little tricky because my career is working with children, and now I'm working with children in the special day class. I've always worked with children. From my first job, I worked at Parks and Rec, working with kids, and then took a pause to go to college, but my summer jobs were always back with children. So that just was something that I always did. And you mentioned I was a little creative, but paintings don't pay the bills for me. I'm not that good. So because I was always working with children, I transitioned from Parks and Rec to working in downtown LA and trying to combine my creativity with working with children. I helped run an art program in Rampart District of LA, and I did that for a while. And then 9/11 came, and I turned 32, and my mom was harping on me about getting a job with insurance and finding stability, and working in downtown and working with kids that were at risk. I knew that that's the population that I wanted to work with, kids who had who tended to have the hardest fight to try to make it. And so I started substituting. That's how I kind of dove into the public school setting and started substituting. I tried general ed, special ed, high school, the whole works, and stumbled onto a special day class, a long-term position, and I was like, okay, this is the closest match to my downtown. A lot of my kids that I was working with in the arts program, a lot of them obviously had some other things going on, and I would say a good third of those kids that I worked with did have some type of learning disability to begin with. And so when I did do that long-term position, it was like, okay, this is a good match. They're outside of the box thinkers. I am too. I'll try this. And so that's how I stumbled in it. I've been teaching basically, like I said, since high school. I taught university for a while as well. So I had the whole gamut. I've tried the whole gamut. I recommend if you're a new teacher and you're just kind of subbing around, I would really recommend trying the whole gamut, because you might not think, you might have a bad year with college students. You might not be bored with college students, and lo and behold, you stumble onto kindergartners, and that works for you. Kindergartners don't work for me, though. For me, my niche was like 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and I was like, okay, this is about the age group that I like. So that's how I stumbled into the career. That's just the question.
Yeah.
Is that good? Okay.
So the next one, what did you learn about classroom management in your credential program, and what, if any, did you apply right away?
Right. I mean, I'm gung-ho, I'm a hard worker, and I was all into this credential program, and I'm gonna be a little bit real. That's all right. I went in there thinking I'm gonna try all these classroom management, small groups, small group, 3 small group settings, kind of the kids rotated, and all these other ideas that I was reading about. But to be honest, after 15 years, now that stuff is kicking in. It started kicking in at about year 7 or 8. The first 5 years, I would try these theories, and it would just kind of blow up in my face, because it's just, these theories don't include these little nuances of the children and their behaviors and what works and doesn't work. So basically the first 5 years was just kind of like, oh my God, it's not working. And so a lot of, the one thing that did save me, if you happen to be a new teacher, where you may not be, is something that actually had nothing to do with what I learned in school, no offense. It was just one book called First Days of School by a guy by the name of, his last name is Wong. That saved me. You know, that book was gold. And for the first 4 or 5 years, that was like my Bible. I would review that before school would start, because working with special day, it's really all about classroom management. And that book didn't necessarily teach you classroom management from the perspective of special education. It just taught me classroom management from good teaching, you know, good teaching practices. So I used that book and the videos that went along with it for the first 5 years, and you know, yeah. Let's see. You know, I did have one class that was pretty amazing, and you know, you'll find some teachers that focus on classroom management that really talked about, how do I put it, just really getting to know the kids and the behaviors. And so once I started getting into like assessing the kids for the current behaviors that I'm seeing, so it's almost like I think they call it functional analysis. I would start to analyze the kids. I can't remember the terms anymore.
We just went over that last week. So.
All right, forgive me, I can't remember all the names
I'm very
anymore.
excited you said that.
But once I took some time to really, I wasn't a school psychologist. I knew our school psychologist was supposed to do these things, but you know, sometimes you guys are overwhelmed just as much as we are, and you can't really do it the way they tell you to do it at the universities. You got to do it quickly. Once I dedicated myself a couple times to a few of my difficult kids and really tried to go through this functional analysis kind of deal, then ideas started opening up in terms of solutions, and I started to make that shift of, okay, I'm just trying to survive till 3 o'clock, to like, wow, okay, I can focus on solutions now. This seems to be a problem. I'm thinking this is the reason. And then it became more about, which tapped into my creativity, about trying different theories. Well, I think the reason he's doing this is for this. I'm going to try this solution to see if it'll work. You know, and sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But that kind of shifted my focus from survival mode to, okay, there's a solution, and we could try to find it. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, and you hit on a few things. So that even the next question I was going to ask, in the first few years, what did you wish you had known that you know now? And you hit on some of those things. Is there anything else that you wish you had known?
Oh yeah, there's a lot more I wish I would have known. You know, I've had many moments. As a matter of fact, I had my moment this year. I'm at year 15, and my first day, I was like, I can't do this anymore. What am I doing? So you're gonna have if you're a new teacher, and if you're a veteran teacher, you know you're gonna have your moments, you know, every few years where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, especially if you're in a special day class. My personality is that I want to give it my all, and for me, everybody goes into teaching for a different reason. Some people become teachers because, you know, they dreamed it when they were little. That wasn't me. Some people go into teaching because they were just really great at academics, and they feel like they'll be able to teach others. You know why I stumbled into teaching, but the reason I love teaching is because the students, I see the students as reflections of me. Okay, I didn't learn to read until I was in 5th grade. You know, and I still struggle with some writing, and I still have my little issues. You know, it takes me forever to send a text because I don't trust myself, and I always catch myself. So my students are reflections of me. So I come into the special day class remembering what it was like for me, struggling, unidentified, and so that's the perspective that I take, and I think a little bit of more talking to us about that. It just kind of, as I was teaching, I realized that this is why I'm doing it. Is because, you know, I see, I'm taking it a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Because of that. But that's not to say the other reasons you're getting into teaching is good or bad. It's just my reason. The other thing that I wish they would have told me was, not that I wish they would have told me, but the method in which I teach is expensive. You know, our schools, our psychological services department, you know, we have staff meetings once a month. They tell us what we're doing wrong, all the different changes on the SACE and all the paperwork stuff. They also tell us different ways we're supposed to teach and what we're supposed to do, but unfortunately, they don't give you the resources that you need. And so a lot of times I feel, for my first 5-6 years, I felt like I was a general doctor with, in the 21st century with 19th century tools. And I happen to I'm not married, I don't have any kids, so I have that income. I'm using that income, my own income, to get some more 21st century tools. And so what I would, you know, I'm spending quite a bit of money to make my program work because I can't get it from the school psychology, you know,
Psych services.
Psych services, because they're on a budget crunch, and I'm not going to get it from the general education department because we're thought about at the last, you know, at the end. But yet we're expected to service these kids that actually need the 21st century tools more than everybody else, you know. And so money, you know, you're going to spend some money if you want to do what they're telling you, and if you want to use research-based materials, you know, if you want to do the RTI thing, those are programs that cost money that the districts aren't going to, and you got to hustle to try to get somebody to pay for it. And, you know, there's been many years, every year, where I'm just like, F it, I'm just going to buy it, and it's going to make my job easier, because once I decided I was going to do it myself, my job did become easier, and I wasn't like struggling to kind of make things work without the tools necessary. I started to invest. Basically, for me, I saw it as an investment in my career, and if I was going to move to another district, I'm just taking my stuff with me, you know. So that's how I rationalized it, but in all honesty, it's expensive. If, you know, but it could be that it's expensive, and it could be in the mode that I'm in. It could be that it's expensive because maybe I should shift the way I'm teaching. Maybe, you know, maybe I can do with less, but that is getting too hard. And if there's a research-based program that's working, that's efficient, I don't want to reinvent the wheel anymore. I don't want to cut and paste and create something when it's already done in this package a lot faster, and it's research-based, and it's proven to work, instead of me trying to figure it out. So that's what I wish I would have been told. The other thing I wish I would have been told is special day class is not just about the interventions. Actually, the interventions is like, at this point in my career, the intervention is just 1/3 of the piece. Teaching my kids how to read and to be more proficient in math is really one component. I would say a smaller component of everything else, which is tied to self-esteem, which is tied to feeling part of, that you belong, not being ignored. All these other things I'm noticing bring this up. And so, yeah, that wasn't talked about. I didn't realize that until I started doing it, that you know, once I bought once I hustled, basically some of it I bought, some of it I hustled. You know, I had to kind of brown nose the tech person and really work with the principal. And once I did that, and the other thing I had to do in order to get these research-based materials is work with kids that need to be in my program, but you know, what is that, wait to fail model kept them from getting the services that they need. And somehow in the RTI, our school never got organized enough to really do the RTI. They just say the words. So, so once I worked with those after-school programs in our school and partnered with them and worked with their kids in an effort to say, oh, we should get this program for the Gen Ed kids who are struggling. And in my mind, I'm like, ooh, that means I'll be able to use it over here with my SDC kids. So I did a lot of that. But once that happened, what occurs once you get these research-based, already all the footwork is done, what that does is just open up your world to actually having fun and teaching with the kids. You know, so like we do our intervention in my classroom. We do our intervention 8:30 to 9 per recommended by these research-based materials. You know, 8:30 to 9. You know, we're doing reading intervention. Take care of that. You know, then we'll do our math intervention. Take care of that. And then after that, we are reading. We're doing language arts, but we're reading for fun and we're reading to learn and discover the world. Or we're doing math, but we're doing math that's more tied to STEAM and to having fun and creating something. Let's build a geodesic dome. Let's do all this stuff. But I had to do all this other check-off. I had to make sure all this other check-off was done per IEPs. But that made it very efficient. I can check that off in an hour and a half, and then I got all this great time to have these STC students actually think outside of the box, which is their strength, to create. It's still academics, but it's like it's a hands-on kind of approach. Yeah. So, maybe I'm gonna.
That's good stuff. I'm thinking about kind of the balance you talked about. So you had to have gotten something within the first 5 years, but I've heard that the awareness really doesn't come until after year 5.
You know, the first 5 year I was hopeful. My first year, it sucked. I had 16 kids, 1 aide, which in some people, you have 21 kids, no aides, but I was thrown in there because Dominguez Hills had a internship program at that time. I don't know if they still do that, but they had a paid internship. Now they're trying to get you to work without, I don't know how that's possible, but it's ridiculous. I don't even understand how that works. But, so it was a paid internship. So basically, you're just kind of thrown in there. And so I was thrown in there with 16 kids and 1 aide. And I'm telling you, my first year, it was just like, what the hell have I done? Like, what have I done with my life? Why am I changing this career at this? You know, it really was survival mode, and it's tough. I mean, when I started, they were saying that the turnover rate for special education at that time was 5 to 7 years. You know, so my first year, I was shooting for 5. You know, and then year 2, I was like, let me just make it to 3. You know, it was a lot going on. You know, our kids were invisible. You know, they would go to mainstream to the gen ed class without support. So they're either in the back or they're on the table. The teachers, gen ed teachers, are overwhelmed, and probably when I was there was a few gen ed teachers that were pissed because it was like, you're sending kids here with no support for 45 minutes, and I'm supposed to try to figure out how to incorporate him, and he's reading at kindergarten, and we're teaching 3rd grade. How am I supposed to incorporate that? So when I got there, it was a lot of angst too, because it was more. A lot of the gen ed teachers felt like we were just kind of dumping up, which it looked like, you know. Also, our kids were forgotten about it, you know. Because our kids were only going in there for 45 minutes or 2 hours, they were forgotten about. Oh, we had an assembly, we forgot to call you. Oh, we had, an art day today, but we changed our schedule. You know, there was a lot of that going on, and so the first 5 years was about getting myself to talk to gen ed teachers and trying to collaborate with them, but not be pushy, really basically helping them out, seeing if I could switch how my aides were presented, because initially my aides, you usually get aides in your classroom, and their hours are based on what the district says or the principal says, right? So my aides, I'd get 2 aides, 1 in the morning from 8 to 12, and then 1 in the afternoon. That worked for the district, and it worked for our school, because then they can plug the aides into duties. But it didn't work for the kids and the program, because then they'd have to switch, and the aides couldn't talk to each other and touch base before they made a switch. So I started playing with. I knew the aides could only have 19.75 hours, because otherwise they have to pay insurance. So I started playing with that, and that was the key. And luckily I had a principal that was okay with that. I said, okay, well, why do we have to go 5 days a week, half day, half day, half day? Why don't you come 2.5 days and you come 2.5 days? That way the kids will have more consistency and you can follow the kids all day. And I started doing that, and it was helping quite a bit. And the gen ed teachers appreciated it too, because then they had, our kids who were getting mainstream had, they had consistency. The gen ed teachers could visually see that somebody was coming in to try to support, you know. So just the first 5 years is just a lot of that, trying to get that down. Once that was down, then it was like, okay, now I can start teaching. Now I can kind of work with the kids and not necessarily be in such a survival mode all the time.
Did you have like a mentor to show you some of these things, or was this kind of trial and error?
No, it was trial and error. It was like, you better figure this out. You got to find another career.
Okay.
Basically, it was trial and error. I mean, I don't know about you guys who got your credentials. When you did your, you know how they have to make you go observe a class? Did they make you observe, or you guys are just starting. Did they make you observe a special day class?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am making you observe a class.
Yeah, and so when I got my credential, I had to observe a class, but it didn't matter if it was a special day or a regular day class. And then they wanted me to try to find a master teacher, a master special day class teacher. I couldn't find, I mean, the special day classes that I visited, which was about 2, it was basically what they're not doing correct. There were so many issues in those classrooms, rightly so though, because they're not given the resources.
Right.
But I never got an opportunity to see what this is a special day class, you know, kind of thing. Like, this is what full inclusion looks like. This is the epitome, you know, like I never saw that live. I still haven't seen a full inclusion class yet. I've seen it on video, like in Massachusetts or somewhere, but you know, you never really get given that. You just kind of, you know, and it was, yeah, like I said, 5 years, it's tough, and I don't see, that's where the turnover starts, right around there, because if you don't push through that part, you start to say, wow, I gotta start over every year, you know. But once you get past those 5 years, if you can hit that, and you kind of tweak everything, then you can start teaching it, in my opinion. Yeah.
What are some of the most interesting behavioral cases you've had in your career? Maybe 1 or 2 examples.
Yeah. They're all interesting. You know, I love kids. You know, that's a tough question.
You mentioned your functional analysis assessments.
Yeah.
Well, maybe even back up. What was prompting you to get to the point where you said, I need to do a functional analysis with this kid?
Okay,
for this student.
that connects to this one class, the behavior management class.
Okay.
And it might have been an assignment. I don't know. Could have been an assignment.
Nice.
That I ended up liking.
Mhm.
And I started doing functional analysis, and it made a big difference. Okay, so some of the kids. You know, they're all interesting, so it's tough to make that call.
Right.
You know, they're all interesting. I can't answer that question. That's very difficult for me because from the child who's the most mild and who has some little quirks to the most severe child who has a lot of quirks, they're both equally engaging in terms of trying to figure out how to help them reach their potential to the level that they can reach. So, you know, what's interesting about each individual child is that depending on their ability levels, my goal as a teacher is to help them reach their independent potential, whatever that may be. And what makes it interesting is trying to figure that out, you know. Memorable cases are, you know, I mean, I could just talk randomly. I don't have like a top 10 or anything like that. Right. Let's see. Well, let's see. You know, I had one student in the spectrum who came in not talking. So 5th grade, actually 4th grade, he thought he was talking, but nobody understood him, and he also had anger issues, obviously, right? If you're talking and you can't understand, he had anger issues, and he would get so pissed off at you if you didn't understand what he was saying. It was like a boo 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 boo, and even if you guessed what he might be saying and you get it slightly wrong, he would scream at the top of his lungs, you know. I almost had the white flag on that one. He would scream and throw things, and but you could tell that there was something there. You could tell that basically he was just trapped, and then just couldn't get it out and really pissed, and he you know, impulse control issues. And we battled, you know, I continued to try to have high expectations for him, and tried all different types of tricks that I could, but didn't work. And I remember the breaking point was there was this word big. He had weight issues too. So you would think a disabled person who is like on mild, moderate, more moderate, isn't affected by American culture. He was still affected, and he understood that being overweight is not a good thing, and you'd be surprised how many times you say the word big, you know, because every time the word big came out of anybody's mouth, I'm not big. Sorry, and then he would throw his phone or throw the markers, throw the chair, and we couldn't figure out how to not use this word big. We just say it by accident, you know, big apple, little apple. It's like you say it so many times, and I think I just got pissed one day. I just got pissed and drew a picture, and I said, okay, it obviously has to do with his weight, and that word is called fat. And if we could teach him fat, maybe he could accept big, because we obviously use big way more than fat. And I just drew the picture. I drew a picture of a fat person. I said, this is fat. Okay, this is fat. And then I drew a picture of like a big mouse and a little mouse. I said, this is a big mouse. This is a little mouse. This is a fat mouse. You know, this is a fat cow. You know, I kept, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay. You know, he was done. He understood it, and he stopped it. So doing that for 3 years, trying to get him to understand the vocabulary that wouldn't piss him off, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. He was a lot of fun. And he actually came back. He made it through high school. By the time he left elementary, we recommended him to like an alternative school because of the issues with the violence, with the throwing and the danger, and he wasn't taking any mess from anybody. And I just didn't think the next step was going to be appropriate for him, partly because I knew that the next teacher was burnt out. You know, she was pretty much done, close to retiring, and he was going to wear her out. And he ended up going to the school, I forgot the name of it, but it's a school where it's one-on-one education, and flourished. And he came back to visit us in now he's like a 9th or 10th grader in high school. He came back to visit to show me and to show my other partner who has been teaching with me in the class this long, to show me that he's talking now, and to show me that, you know, he's learned a lot, and he was just drawing everything that he learned, and he was telling me all the websites that we should take the kids to, but it was still it was choppy language, but it was language and we understood it, and so it was just like, okay, good, what we're doing is kind of working. They're coming back to tell us some stuff, you know. But yeah, he came back, and then actually, you know, he still had his temper issues, you know. And then 2 years later, he came back again. He actually ran away from home, and he ran to Peter Burnett, and we were just like, oh, okay, good. He came back to Peter Burnett. Calm down, Alex. It's okay. But yeah, so I would say he's the most memorable because he went from not talking and having anger, and he left us not talking, so we assumed that we didn't make any difference. You know, we assumed that, okay, he's not going to remember us, he's autistic, and he's just a pissed guy, but he came back to kind of specifically to let us know everything that he learned, so it helped us kind of keep going another few years. You know.
That's it.
So, yeah.
You mentioned the other teacher who's burnt out.
Yeah,
What helps you deal with stress on the job?
yeah. Well, I never work in the summer. I don't work with kids in the summer. I stay away from children in the summer completely.
Right.
And I'm fortunate because, like I said, I don't have any kids, so I know there's plenty of moms there. But I do stay away from kids, and have another passion that's not connected at all to teaching. So surfing has basically saved me quite a bit. But surfing can be walking, can be riding your bike, can be rollerblading. Surfing is just something else that keeps you. And 1 year I taught summer school special day class, and I knew, because you taught summer school special day class, so you can try it once and see what it's like, but I taught summer school special day, and then having to come back that September back to special day, I barely made it, I barely made it, and after that it was like, I have to save my money so I don't have to work in the summer, and so I've been trying to do that. I think that's the key, really taking advantage of your breaks, if you can afford it. I barely afford it, but I find a way to save some money, and sometimes I go to the credit union and say I need a loan to make it through the summer because I am not going to work, and then I pay it off during the school year. So, yeah. But,
That's real.
yeah, that's for special day. I don't know about the general ed teachers, but from what I'm seeing, you guys are, pulled to your absolute limit as well, just in a different way. And for me, taking the breaks is like everything. Yeah.
I figure we open it up for questions from the class. Have any questions?
So now that you've been teaching special ed for about 15 years.
Yeah, you got times that by 7.
Right.
Seriously.
So what does it look like after school for you? How long do you usually stay?
Yeah.
How does that differ from
Yeah,
your first year?
so about year 9, the first 5 years, and I don't want to scare anybody,
No.
but I'm obsessive. That's probably my problem. I don't think it needs to be that way, but my first few years, yeah, I would stay at work till about 6 or 7, 12, 13-hour days. And the times that I tried not to, I said, I'm leaving at 4 o'clock. And all that did is, for me at the beginning, is the next day it made it more chaotic. It was like, I have to do this or else I can't. There's too many different behaviors that'll, drive me batty. I mean, that's from the special day class perspective, right? RSP might be a little different. Special day is a whole different, and I think now there are less special day classrooms. I mean, I think there aren't too many now. It's like this full inclusion kind of deal, which is great for my mild kids, because more opportunities in the gen ed classroom. But sometimes the more moderate kids get shafted. But yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest. You're looking at long hours. Yeah. Now, I'm still doing the long hours, but I'm doing it in reverse. I'm finding that by 3 o'clock I'm kind of spent, and I'm staying till 6, but I'm not doing much. I barely think. So I do the opposite. I'll come into work at 6 or 5:30 or 6, and then I leave at a decent time around 4. And I'm finding this year, and that's the first time I'm doing that, is this year. Take that back. I've been trying to do that for 3 years.
Right.
This year, for some reason, I have the discipline to get up, to do it, and it's making a difference, So I would, yeah. I mean, you don't have to, but I have to. I wish I was more organized, that I could get everything together, but I need those 2, 3 hours before school.
Well, that was kind of my question as well, but you teach 3, 4, 5?
Yeah, 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you teach, so you had your credential in Mile Moderate as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that, because like I worked in a Mile Moderate classroom, and
Yeah.
I've got a lot of different disabilities where so many different levels.
Yeah.
Do you find that every year it's still like the label of Mile Moderate really doesn't?
Oh, yeah, it's such a big range.
It doesn't really
At what point
identify
is there's mild, moderate, and moderate to severe.
Yeah.
That word moderate,
Yeah.
you don't.
Okay.
At what point does moderate become severe? I don't know. And it's been a few years where the district has pushed that boundary, you know, of this moderate child is actually a severe child. It's, you know, that's, yeah.
Yes, you just work with it.
You try to work with it, and, yeah, you try to work with it. You know, that's when the small group rotations and all those things that I did learn at Dominguez started to play in. But they played in through experience. Like you know, the first few years when I tried it, in my mind I was like, I'm never down trying that crap again. That did not work. But now it's working. You know, it's working because I had the years in there, and I'm thinking more deeply about the kids and how I group them. Like initially when I first started, I tried to group by levels. And I still try to do that, like, you know, okay, all these guys are in kindergarten level, I'm gonna put them in this group, 3rd grade level, you know, I put them in groups by academics. Now what I'm doing is, I assess them for their levels at first, and if they happen to work out, I put them in the levels, but I'm actually grouping them by their social thinking abilities. Because you're speaking to kids in a different way depending on their social thinking ability. So if a child has limited language and limited receptive, having a long conversation like I'm doing with you right now, out the door. You know, they're not even paying attention. So but this child could be at a 3rd grade level in math, but his social thinking and language is way down here. Initially, I used to just do levels, and what would happen is I'm trying to explain something to the cognitively right-on kids, the kids who socially are good to go, the kids who are embarrassed or trying to deal with the fact that they're in an SDC class. They're low academically, but I'm partnering up with, so I used to partner up with another kid who's low socially because they were at the same levels, but really what it came down to is you need to group them by their social thinking levels. Because now when I rotate my groups, I can speak to the high functioning, mild moderate, who are just regular kids, who basically were me, right? Who socially they're with it. But I can speak to them with dignity and talk to them about curriculum and brainstorming on how we're gonna problem solve this difficulty that you have. Like those kids, you know, we talk honestly about the fact that they're low in reading and, you know, that he has dyslexia and like how we're gonna figure that out and let's try you know, I can talk to them about that and we problem solve things together. Like Michael, you know, you have trouble writing, what can we do? You know, I know you don't want us dictate, you don't want me writing, dictate, you know, you don't want to dictate to me for the rest of your life, you know. He's all, when we got Chromebooks, I was like, let's try this Chromebook, Michael, and let's download an app. I know there's apps out there that if you speak it, it'll write it, and we found it, you know. So these kids you can do that with, but my low language kids, you can't really do that. It's like, Dario, sit down, pick up, you know.
Yeah.
So pencil down, get that out of your mouth. You know, I'm doing all these other things, and when I was mixing them up, what would happen is I would deal with this low social thinking behavior. Meanwhile, my high kids sitting around waiting like, when's she gonna get him under control? You know, like. It just didn't match. So you got to think levels, but you also got to think of your pairings in terms of given the dignity of what these mild kids are actually brilliant kids. They just happen not to figure, you know, they have a processing disability in reading. You know, that's just one thing of all the, what do you call that? Of all your strengths that he has. Okay, reading is a weakness, but everything else is fine. So you want to give them that. You want to pair that way too. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
That was great. That was great. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
I guess listening to your experiences made me think of a student I worked with as a instructional assistant. Working with him, you know, I was told he has an intellectual disability, but then I started finding out more about his family, like father's in prison, mother's in drug rehab, and I started looking at him, I was like, is this emotional disturbance or is this intellectual disability? How do you,
It's really
figure that
tough.
out?
It's really tough. I mean, okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be really honest. It's probably a what not to do. But, you know, I look at the IEPs once a year, to be honest, you know, and I try not, you know, I figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are in terms of their processing abilities, right? I put that aside because there's been many times when the students were identified as having a cognitive disability and were already getting tracked towards the, you know, functional skills class, when that was not the case, where this child happened to have severe speech delays, and he was dyslexic. And so it appeared that he was just, you know, had cognitive disabilities, but in actuality that wasn't the case, you know. And so a lot of times, you know, and in the middle of me working with kids, you know, by the first year they might be specific SLD, specific language delay, and then by the end we kind of figure out, it ended up being maybe high functioning autism, or what they used to call Asperger's, or something, you know. So the labels, you need that information, but you also kind of put that aside and just get to know the kids and figure out their quirks. And a lot of them, it's environmental, that's a factor, you know. You know, I would say in my classroom, in general, the majority are mild, moderate. I've been lucky, maybe I haven't had, most of them suffer from severe low self-esteem, from a sense that nobody cares about it. Most of my kids, the majority of my kids, have never been stakeholders in their own learning. Okay, you'll have your few Darios or your few Alexes that should have been probably in the severe class, but that's usually one or two of my kids. You know, I'll average about 14 kids. That's like one or two. The rest of them, what you tap into is their sense of self. You speak to them, have a conversation, and put the books aside and let's just talk, you know, or let's empower them into their learning, and that makes a difference. And then lo and behold, sometimes the true essence of why they have stumbling blocks kind of unfolds itself, you know, and you're able to figure that out. Another thing I would say is just good teaching, just general good teaching. Good teaching methodologies also help.
Just to follow up on that, that's part of the reason why we do 3-year reevaluations. And I think, especially for younger kids, it's good to do the complete eval
Good point.
when they're younger. And like, you know, if they were placed in kindergarten, then we're looking at them again in 2nd or 3rd grade.
Yeah.
You can be completely wrong in the developmental trajectory, or some great environmental things could have happened and they flourish, or something is very different.
Sure.
So it's good to keep up with that. I think
Yeah.
I was a high school psychologist, so I had all the hindsight of what my colleagues were or were not doing. But even then, every once in a while I'd find something where they just hadn't considered this other facet. And so we keep running into the same issue. And I said, maybe we need to consider this other thing. So, and you'll see trends, like ADHD versus just about everything else. And that was in the 80s and 90s. And then in the 90s and early 2000s, autism was kind of like everywhere. And there wasn't really a way to differentiate between it. And people didn't have rating scales. All they had was the DSM and the list of issues. Now they have all kinds of diagnostic tools to get down to it. But at the end of the day, that's not going to change for that kid. That label is not going to change their experience when they come to the building. When they come to them, when they get off the bus or their parents drop them off, to them, it's one experience. Nobody's putting anything on my forehead saying I'm this or that. But they do get a sense of, I do go to this special class, and I'm hoping I get something out of that.
And then just to add to that is, they do get a sense that they're in a different class, but oftentimes too, they also don't fully get explained why they're in that special class. You know, the grown-ups make the decisions, and for the high functioning, the mild kids, the ones that were like me, you know, they just assume they're dumb. They're in the dummy class. because it's never been explained what this class is and how this class can help. They don't know what the lays are specifically. So I've been playing with that quite a bit with the kids with my high kids who know what's going on and who I can see where the self-esteem is hitting. And they don't, I had a kid last year who basically was like, why am I in this class? I don't want to be in the class. How come nobody else has to be in this class? I want to get out of here, because all of a sudden in 4th grade, he realized this class is different than this class is different. And then he was in this fix. On the one hand, socially he wanted to get out of his class, but when he was in the class, he loved it. But then when he was out of the class, everybody else is saying, why am I in this class? So for a kid like that if you come across a kid like that who obviously knows something's going on, nobody's telling him, it's time to tell him. When they're starting to ask those questions, in my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was misdiagnosed with dyslexia when I was in elementary school. They put me in the RSP classes.
Yes. Yeah.
And then all the other, because nobody knew what RSP meant. Nobody would tell us. And
Nobody
so
tells
like,
you.
It means really stupid people.
Yeah, right. Nobody
And so
tells
they
you.
would tell me that, like, oh, you're an RSP. That's really stupid.
Exactly.
People.
And so with the higher functioning, it's like I talk to the parents first and say, let's have a conversation about whether or not we should talk to your child about what my classroom is and why it's there and how it can potentially help. So at least they would know. And what I'm finding is when you tell the higher kids, the mild kids, what's going on, man, they resist so much less because they're like, oh, because a lot of times you tell kids things, like if you were to come in a wheelchair, a little child might come up to you, why are you in a wheelchair? Oh, because I, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, okay, and then they deal with it. What I'm finding is a lot of the kids who are mild, if we talk to them, this is what they think, you think you have this word, it's called dyslexia, I'm not 100% sure, because I'm not a doctor, I talk to the kids about that, and talk to them about what my class is, so that it's not, for me, I tell my kids that SDC, that the common people out there think that it's the special day class, but this is a superhero day class. Don't tell anybody. Superman, he can fly, he has some kryptonite, and he's working around that, but really, you're here to improve your superpowers. We're going to help you with your weaknesses, but the key is you're in the super day class, you're a superhero in the making, young Jedi. And we're here to get your superpowers going. I got 3 years for you to get your superpowers going. So it's got, you talk about the special day class, but you and that's really my attitude with the kids. It's like, you got some powers in you. We need to find them. Everybody's like ignoring you and telling you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. You're having difficulty with that, and I'm here to help you, and we got these research-based programs that'll help you in an hour and a half. But the rest of the time is about your superpowers, right? The rest of the time is to survive. I survived not being able to read from 5th grade, not from research-based programs, is my other superpowers. I was a good athlete, I was a good artist, and I began to recognize that when I made my first free throw shot. I couldn't read, but I made my first free throw shot after school. I'm good to go. I got a superpower, and that gave me something, right? And so if you were going to teach special day class, you want to kind of, for those higher kids, you want to approach it that way, because that's the reality. Like, you need, there's this movie, the Ray Charles movie. And there's a scene in there, he's going blind. I don't know if anybody's seen that movie. He's going blind as a child, and the mom knows this, right? And you watch that mother, and she has a decision to make. And I talk to the parents about that too. She has a decision to make, what kind of parent is she going to be there, And this mom, Ray Charles, there was a scene where Ray Charles was trying to get a book or trying to get something across the room, and he asked his mom, where is, basically asking his mom to get it for him because he couldn't see anymore. And there was a silent moment there, right, where the mom,
sees the cockroach.
yeah, Yeah, the silent home where the mom was basically, you get it yourself. And on his way to trying to get it, he's bumping into tables, he's stumbling, he's doing, mom's watching, it's all quiet, there's no talking in the scene. And then he gets that, he ends up getting it, but it was like a chore, you know. But lo and behold, the more mom did that, the more his other powers, right? His superpowers come in, and all of a sudden he can listen, he can hear a freaking fly or something. And it's because compensation, right? I compensated with athletics because that happened to be a strength that I tapped into. But the mild kids, you know, the kids who happen to have difficulty with reading and writing, they truly do have these other skills that you have to tap into, because those are the skills that are gonna make them feel like they're stakeholders in the community. Those are the skills that are gonna make them feel like, okay, I'm somebody. I may not be able to do that. I can't read, so what? But I can do this and this and this. And that, believe it or not, will get the reading going, you know? You know, the education will help, but this other thing will get that going.
How do you deal with the politics and just basically the general ed teachers? Because where I'm at right now, I've been placed from school to school, so I've worked from like high school to like the babies. And right now I'm doing art today intervention, and we were doing our meetings today, and one of the teachers said something that kind of just like it was so terrible. But we were placing the kids into groups, and they were like, okay, well those are receiving RSP services,
So they don't.
we're not going to deal with them.
Yeah.
We're going to send them with the RSP teacher.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're going to give them to me because they know I'm doing my special ed credential.
Yeah.
But it's like, have you guys tried doing like individualized instruction instead of
Yeah,
like
you know.
that cookie cutter thing?
Right. Well, it's tough, you know, because from the gen ed teacher's perspective, that's some hard ass crap. You got 32 kids in your class, and you know the educational system, in my opinion, you know, us sitting like this, the way we're sitting right now, facing forward, rows, you know, that was a design that was set up, you know, during like the Industrial Revolution time. You know, it's like, okay, most efficient way to get you guys to learn, line them up in a row, you know, and that's the way. That really hasn't changed that much. This setup has been the case for hundreds of years, and so from the perspective of the gen ed teacher, they're being asked to teach the masses, and they have to get this curriculum done. They have to get through this lesson, you know, they have to get through this stuff in a week, in 2 days. And so it is truly difficult from the gen ed perspective to do what you're describing without getting pissed off, right? Because I'm special day class, and I'm trying to tell a gen ed teacher, you know, differentiate your instruction when she has 2 days to teach a whole chapter is difficult, you know. And so you got to hold that tongue, just bite that tongue. If you're lucky enough to be in a school long enough, like, because if you're going from grade year to year, that's tough, and that's our system. That system is depressing in that respect. It's tough for you to have an impact on shifting the minds of gen ed teachers. You know, when I came, the gen ed teachers, you know, like I said, my kids were just thrown in with no support because I only had two aides. It was physically impossible for me to be in all the classes, and they felt guilty. You know, the teachers who see these special needs kids come, and they see them in the back of the table, and they, oh crap, I'm teaching this lesson, I forgot to differentiate, or I didn't have time to differentiate. There's also a little bit of guilt in there too, but there's nothing you can do about it. They have to keep moving, you know. So I don't know what to tell you on that one. I don't know what to tell you. The way I addressed it, when it was egregious, you know, like I said, I wear many hats. When it's egregious, I might come out and say, this is a civil rights issue right here. Like, this is a civil rights issue. You can't do that, you know. But that's been on extreme cases. The best approach that I have found that's been most effective is to give support to those gen ed teachers where I could. And so I've been hustling, right? But you have to put in the time to do that. Like I said, at 0 to 5, I only had 2 aides. Then I started collaborating with the intervention. Then I volunteered. I came before school and worked with the gen ed, and they saw me working with their kids that they couldn't manage, like that they couldn't help succeed academically in the morning. They saw me take in kids after school for homework club that weren't my kids, but I started to try to work with them and show them that I'm on your team and I'm trying to help. And then that led to getting a little bit more support in my classroom. And then when I got more support in my classroom, that led me to be able to think about how my kids go into the gen ed class. So right now, my kids, I'm just fortunate, and I'm knock on wood, if my principal leaves, it might all go to hell. And you know how that goes. But now I have enough staff, right, where if they're gonna go to mainstream for gen ed, they have to truly be high functioning enough right now for academics. If they're gonna go for academics, then I send them with support. But not one-on-one support where you're just standing right here next to Bobby, and Bobby's only talking to you. My supports in the classroom become the teacher. We're here for you. We're your coach. I'm your assistant. That's the first year of the routine with my aides is you go in there and you show that gen ed teacher that you are her best friend. You need to make copies. I'll make those copies for you. Do everything to ease the stress of this gen ed about having 3 kids in the class that are special needs. I cluster my kids, no more than 4. I cluster them and send support staff, not necessarily co-teaching support staff. And the instructions for the support staff, even if one of those 4 is a one-on-one, that is a one-on-one. It's fated support. It's fated one-on-one support. That's what I call it, fated one-on-one support. So that way, that one-on-one doesn't become dependent on you, but also the teacher sees that you're here for support, and then the kids see, and then you hold them accountable. You teach them the study skills and academic survival skills that they need. And most of the time, I never have to reteach my mild moderate kids because we just focus on the study skills and the academic survival skills. Like, okay, you're not gonna be able to listen if you're sitting like this. Okay, sit up. Let's show the teacher that you're listening to her. Okay, your notes are too messy. How are you gonna read? We work on those peripheral skills. Okay, you didn't do your homework because you didn't write it down correctly. Let's stay focused on writing our homework. We work on those other peripheral skills that the teacher really appreciates, and that takes care of the rest. But that doesn't work if you're you can't do that if you're switching from year to year. So that's a system issue. That's a system issue. If it's egregious, I say something, but then they're looking at you, oh, that's that RSP teacher, she's gonna cause, it's a fine balance. It's a very fine balance that you have to play. It's tricky, If you focus all your energy on that though, there's some teachers within the RSP, if you focus your energy on that, on what the gen ed, the motto in my classroom is focus on the kids, focus on the kids, focus on the kids. No matter what kind of drama there is with the adults, that's our little powwow that's what I say to myself when I have situations where that throws you off a little bit. We're gonna prove her wrong.
Especially with the more mild ones.
Yeah, no, then you focus on the kids. There's been a few times where I've told my high kids, I said, she thinks you can't write a paragraph, and so she wants you to do this, but you can do, you turn it around. You turn it around in a way that's like, and then they'll be like, I'll show her, but I can do this crap, So yeah, my motto would be focus on the kids. Like, there's going to be a lot of drama, and you just want to just focus on the solutions, focus on the children. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Is that LA Unified or Norwalk? Yeah, it's terrible.
And it could be just about any district.
It could be any district.
Yeah.
It could be any district.
I was at Montebello for a while. They're the same way.
Yeah, it's
Alright, that's it.
Okay.
Unless you had any other thoughts you want to share.
I'm good.
Right, let's keep on doing Okay, so we will take a break until, 22 after. See y'all then.
Thank you.
Sure. I'll walk you out.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted to.
No,
You know, it's just like, so, like, my entire life, I can always have something to read to me every, what is that, something else? What does that say? How did you learn how to read? And then, I never learned my ABCs. And they were like, actually told me what ABCs do. Is they would say, okay, everyone in the class sing your ABCs, and everyone who already knew would sing it. It's actually really entertaining, so I haven't learned it yet. So they would sing their ABCs, and then, yeah, and then teacher's like, okay, you all know your ABCs, like, go do whatever. And no one ever tells me to see that I do my ABCs. They would do it as a thing, and then I never sang them. And then, like, they just started to do my ABCs. Well, the ABC song, I didn't know, like, several letters. So I went in the first grade, I did my ABCs. My first grade teacher had cages full of animals lining the walls. And so I was like a really good student in that I always sat silently. And the teacher would actually put other children to sit next to me so I would punish the other children if they talked too much. Which is like a terrible thing to do to children. It's like you want to ostracize the life of your class. That's what I do. Like, and I think I spend more time, I just like pay attention to animals when you just want to never pay attention to class. So I was like super helpful and like super polite and like quiet. And so I had to learn this and so they were like, oh, and I got to sing teachers from everything else. And she didn't know how to do her class at all. Like I remember being in her singing like so teacher ever and like us just like chatting about things and like the teacher was not even she like couldn't stop smoking, she was not even and she made me so that I was dyslexic. And